The sun was setting over the quaint little town, casting a warm glow over the rows of neatly trimmed houses that lined the streets. In one of those homes, a young girl named Lily sat by the window, her bright blue eyes fixed on the mailbox at the end of the driveway. Her golden curls framed her cherubic face, a face that should have been filled with the carefree joy of childhood, but instead bore the weight of a burden far too heavy for her tender years. Lily's father, James, was a kind and gentle soul, a man who had dedicated his life to raising his daughter after his wife's untimely passing during childbirth. He worked tirelessly as a carpenter, his calloused hands a testament to the long hours he spent crafting beautiful pieces of furniture, all to provide a comfortable life for his little girl. On Lily's 10th birthday, a somber cloud had descended upon their home. James had received his draft notice, a summons to join the fight overseas in a war that seemed to have no end in sight. Lily could still vividly recall the moment he had broken the news to her, his eyes glistening with unshed tears as he pulled her into a tight embrace. "My precious Lily," he had whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "Daddy has to go away for a little while, but I promise I'll come back to you as soon as I can. You're the bravest girl I know, and I need you to be strong for me, okay?" Lily had nodded, her small frame trembling as she clung to her father, desperately trying to commit every detail of his face to memory. The warmth of his smile, the crinkles at the corners of his eyes, the scent of sawdust that seemed to cling to his clothes like a second skin. In the days that followed, James had prepared for his departure, packing his belongings and ensuring that Lily would be well taken care of in his absence. He had arranged for her to stay with their elderly neighbor, Mrs. Smith, a kindly woman who had been like a grandmother to Lily. The night before he left, James had tucked Lily into bed, his strong arms enveloping her in a protective embrace. Lily clung to him tightly, her small frame trembling as she fought back tears. She didn't want to let him go, didn't want to be separated from the man who was her whole world. "Daddy, please don't go," she whimpered, her bright blue eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I'll be so lonely without you." James felt his heart constrict at the sight of his daughter's anguish. He smoothed back her golden curls, his calloused fingers gentle against her soft skin. "Remember, Lily," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "No matter how far apart we may be, you'll always be in my heart. And when this is all over, we'll have so many adventures together, just you and me." Lily's lower lip quivered, and she buried her face in her father's chest, inhaling the familiar scent of sawdust and fresh air that clung to his shirt. "Promise?" she mumbled, her voice muffled against the fabric. James tightened his embrace, his heart aching at the thought of leaving his precious daughter behind. "I promise, sweetheart, and you know I never break my promises." Lily nodded, her tears dampening her father's shirt as she clung to him with all her might. She didn't want to let go, didn't want to face the reality of his impending departure. Finally, James gently disentangled himself from her embrace, pressing a tender kiss to her forehead. Now, my brave girl," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "No more tears. I'll write you letters every single day, telling you all about my grand adventures, and before you know it, I'll be back, and we'll have our own adventures together." Lily managed a watery smile, her eyes shining with a glimmer of hope. "Will you tell me stories about the places you go and the people you meet?" James chuckled, ruffling her hair affectionately. "Of course, my little explorer. I'll spin tales so grand and exciting, you'll feel like you're right there with me." Lily giggled, her earlier sorrow momentarily forgotten as she imagined the wondrous stories her father would weave for her. She snuggled deeper into her bed, her eyelids growing heavy with the promise of dreams filled with fantastical adventures. As she drifted off to sleep, Lily clung to those words like a lifeline, repeating them over and over in her mind as she watched her father's broad shoulders disappear into the distance the next morning, his uniform crisp and his stride determined. She knew he would keep his promise, and the thought of his letters filled her with a sense of comfort and anticipation, a beacon of hope in the darkness of his absence. At first, the letters had come regularly, each one filled with tales of James's exploits and reassurances of his unwavering love for his daughter. Lily would pore over every word, tracing the familiar curves of her father's handwriting with her fingertips, imagining his voice as she read the lines aloud. As the months turned into years, the letters became fewer and farther between, the words tinged with a weariness that spoke of the horrors James had witnessed on the battlefield. Still, Lily clung to them, her faith in her father's return never wavering. On the days when the mailbox remained empty, Lily would sit by the window, her eyes fixed on the horizon, waiting for the familiar figure of the mailman to appear. She would imagine her father's letters, filled with tales of his bravery and his longing to be reunited with his beloved daughter. As Lily grew from a child into a young woman, her unwavering devotion to her father never faltered. She would spend hours poring over the old letters, her fingers tracing the faded ink as if it were a lifeline connecting her to the man she loved more than anything in the world. Then, one fateful day, there was a knock at the door that shattered the fragile peace Lily had clung to for so long. She opened it to find a solemn-faced military officer standing on the porch, his cap clutched tightly in his hands as if it were a lifeline. In that moment, Lily felt her heart plummet into the depths of her stomach, a cold dread washing over her like a tidal wave. "Miss Lily," the officer said, his voice laced with a sympathy that only served to heighten her growing sense of dread. "I'm afraid I have some terrible news." Those words seemed to echo in Lily's ears, each syllable a dagger piercing her heart as the officer delivered the devastating blow. "Your father James was killed in action. He fought bravely until the very end, and his sacrifice will never be forgotten." The world seemed to tilt on its axis, and Lily felt as though she were falling into a bottomless abyss of despair. Her legs buckled beneath her and she sank to her knees, her body racked with sobs that tore from the depths of her soul. The man who had been her rock, her protector, her everything, was gone, and the world suddenly seemed a much darker, colder place without his light to guide her. Lily's anguished cries echoed through the empty house, a haunting melody of grief and loss that seemed to reverberate in every corner. She clutched at her chest, her nails digging into her skin as if she could physically tear away the pain that threatened to consume her from the inside out. Memories of her father's warm embrace, his infectious laughter, and his unwavering love assaulted her mind, each one a cruel reminder of what she had lost. She could almost hear his voice, whispering promises of grand adventures and a future filled with joy and wonder, promises that would now forever remain unfulfilled. As the officer's words continued to echo in her mind, Lily felt as though she were drowning in a sea of grief, the waves of sorrow crashing over her relentlessly. She curled in on herself, her body shaking with the force of her sobs, as the reality of her father's death washed over her like a tidal wave, sweeping away the last vestiges of hope she had clung to for so long. In the years that followed, Lily tried her best to move on, to honor her father's memory by living a life that would have made him proud. But there was always a part of her that remained frozen in that moment, a piece of her heart that had shattered irreparably the day she learned of his fate. On Memorial Day each year, Lily would make the pilgrimage to the local cemetery, her steps heavy with the weight of her grief. She would kneel before her father's grave, her fingers tracing the letters etched into the cold stone, and she would whisper the same words she had spoken every year since that fateful day. "I'm still waiting for you, Daddy. I'll always be waiting for you." As the decades passed, Lily's golden curls turned to silver, and the lines on her face deepened, a testament to the years of sorrow she had endured. But still, she remained steadfast in her vigil, her unwavering devotion to her father, a beacon of hope in a world that had long since lost its luster. On the eve of her 80th birthday, Lily found herself once again kneeling before her father's grave, her arthritic fingers clutching a bouquet of freshly picked wildflowers. The cemetery was bathed in the soft glow of the setting sun, and Lily could almost feel her father's presence surrounding her, a warm embrace that offered solace in her darkest moments. "I miss you, Daddy," she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. "Every day I miss you more than the last. But I know you're watching over me, just like you promised you would." As the last rays of sunlight faded, Lily felt a sense of peace wash over her, a gentle calm that she had not experienced in years. She knew deep in her heart that her father's spirit was with her, guiding her through the twilight of her life and offering her the strength to face whatever lay ahead. With a soft smile playing on her lips, Lily rose to her feet, her steps a little lighter than they had been in years. As she made her way out of the cemetery, she cast one final glance over her shoulder, her eyes lingering on the simple headstone that marked her father's final resting place. "I'll see you soon, Daddy," she whispered, her voice carried away on the gentle breeze. "And then, we'll have all the adventures you promised me, just you and me, together forever,